Those dark bruises aren't from cleaning." The words hung in the air between them like a verdict. Sophia Booth's hand trembled as Seo-jun, the Korean Mafia boss who lived 42 floors above her basement apartment, gently turned her wrist, studying the purple fingerprints that wrapped around her arm like a brand. "I know," she whispered, tears finally breaking free after 14 months of holding them back. "I know they're not." For 3 months, Seo-jun has been watching, documenting, waiting for the bruises to stop appearing on his housekeeper's exposed arms. But every Tuesday and Friday, without fail, new marks surfaced. Handprints, welts, the unmistakable shadow of fingers wrapped around her throat. And Seo-jun had finally seen enough. Have you ever watched someone try to disappear, hoping that if they're quiet enough, invisible enough, that danger will pass them by? Sophia had perfected that art. But what she didn't know was that the most dangerous man in Atlanta's Buckhead district had been watching her all along. And he was about to teach her abuser the true meaning of consequences. If you're ready to see how a powerful man stand up for someone the world chose to ignore, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a moment of this intense journey toward justice and healing. This is the story of how a maid with nowhere to run found protection from the last person she ever expected. A man whose empire was built in shadows, whose word was law in Atlanta's underworld, and whose code demanded one absolute truth. No one hurts his people, ever. Sophia Booth worked at the Peachtree Luxury Residences, were Georgia's wealthiest kept penthouses that cost more per month than most people earned in a year. She wore the regulation uniform, black dress, white collar, short sleeves that left her arms completely exposed. The building manager had been clear. Professional, standardized appearance, non-negotiable. So every day, Sophia walked through marble lobbies and rode glass elevators with her bruises on full display, praying that everyone would keep doing what they'd been doing for 14 months. Looking away. But Seo-jun wasn't like everyone else. Seo-jun had moved into the penthouse on the 42nd floor 3 months ago. The building manager had personally handled his lease, asking no questions about the wire transfer from a Seoul-based import-export company, or the fact that his background check had been waived entirely. The other residents gave him a wide berth in the lobby. Some instinct told them that this man, with his perfectly tailored suits, his cold courtesy, and the way his security team materialized whenever he left the building, was not someone you engaged in elevator small talk. They were right. Seo-jun ran the southeastern operations for the Cheongryong clan, one of Korea's most powerful organized crime families. Atlanta had become strategic. Access to the port in Savannah. Proximity to major highways. A growing Korean community that provided both cover and infrastructure. To the IRS, he was a legitimate businessman investing in real estate. To everyone else who mattered, he was untouchable. He'd first seen Sophia on a Thursday morning when she'd been assigned to his residence. The regular housekeeper had called in sick, and Sophia had arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, carrying her cleaning caddy and wearing that carefully neutral expression of professional invisibility. "Good morning," she'd said, her voice soft but steady. "I'll start with the kitchen and work my way through. I should be finished in about 2 hours. You won't even know I'm here." She'd been right about that. She moved through his space like a ghost, leaving behind the scent of lemon polish and the kind of meticulous order that suggested someone who understood exactly how things should be. Books returned to shelves at precise angles, remote controls aligned on the coffee table. Not a single item moved unnecessarily or snooped through. Seo-jun appreciated competence. It was rare. But it was the bruises on her bare arms that made him look twice. That first day, there had been 3 distinct marks. 2 on her left forearm, 1 circling her right wrist. He'd noted them with the same clinical detachment he applied to everything else in his world. People had their problems. It wasn't his business. But the bruises kept appearing, and they were getting worse. Week 2. A handprint-shaped bruise wrapped around her upper arm, dark enough to see from across the room. Week 4. Scrapes on her knuckles, as if she'd tried to defend herself. Week 6. A split lip she'd covered with lipstick that didn't quite match her skin tone. Week 8. Bruises on both wrists, fresh and livid, impossible to miss as she polished his coffee table. Seo-jun found himself watching for her on the days she was scheduled to clean his residence. Noting the way she held her left arm stiffly one week. The careful way she moved, as if her ribs hurt. The way she flinched, just barely, just for a second, when he walked into a room unexpectedly. He'd seen that flinch before, in Seoul, in women who worked in establishments his clan protected, women who'd been hurt by men who thought they were untouchable. Seo-jun didn't do charity. He didn't involve himself in personal dramas or domestic situations that didn't affect his operations. But he also operated by a code that was absolute. The Cheongryong clan didn't prey on civilians. The people who worked for them, who existed in their orbit, were paid well and protected absolutely. He'd killed men for breaking that code. Twice. And now, every time Sophia Booth walked into his penthouse with new bruises on her exposed arms, something cold settled in his chest. Someone was systematically breaking one of his household staff. And if he did nothing, he'd eventually be cleaning up a body. Week 12 changed everything. Sophia arrived on a Tuesday morning with bruises on her neck. Faint, but visible above her white collar. Thumb marks on one side, fingers on the other. Someone had choked her. Seo-jun watched her move through his living room, dusting shelves with that same practiced invisibility, and made his decision. He pulled out his phone and called his head of security. "Kim Min-jae," he said, his voice cold and precise. "I need surveillance on one of the building's housekeeping staff. Not invasive. Just eyes on her movements outside of work. Who she meets, where she goes, anyone who approaches her." Kim Min-jae didn't ask why. He'd worked for Seo-jun long enough to know that questions came after execution, not before. Name? Sophia Booth. Works the morning shift. Lives in the basement staff apartments. Seo-jun paused, his eyes tracking Sophia as she moved to the windows. "I want to know who's putting their hands on her." There was a brief pause on the line, then, "Understood. How far can we go?" Seo-jun's voice dropped lower, taking on a quality that had made grown men reconsider their life choices. "Observation only, for now." The surveillance began the next day, and what Kim Min-jae discovered would confirm Seo-jun's worst suspicions. Sophia Booth wasn't just being hurt. She was being hunted. Have you ever known someone was in danger but didn't know how to help? Sophia was about to discover that someone had been watching all along, and that someone was about to make her problem disappear. Within a week, Kim Min-jae had a preliminary report, and it was worse than Seo-jun had anticipated. Subject leaves the building on her days off, Wednesday and Saturday. Min-jae's voice was clinical, professional. Usual pattern. Takes Marta to Lindbergh Station, walks to nearby Kroger, CVS, occasionally the TD Bank branch on Piedmont. Uses bus routes 1 to 10 and 5 for other errands. He paused, and Seo-jun heard the shift in his tone. On Wednesday of the surveillance period, a white male, approximately 30 to 35 years old, approached her at the bus stop outside Kroger. Physical contact observed. Subject grabbed the target's upper arm. Conversation appeared heated. Target appeared distressed. Interaction lasted approximately 4 minutes. Seo-jun's jaw tightened. And then? Subject departed in a silver Audi Georgia plates. Target waited 15 minutes for the next bus, visibly shaken. The license plate traced back to Derek Chamberlain, 34 years old. Marketing director at Pinnacle Strategic Group in Midtown. Address: Atlantic Station Luxury High-Rise. No criminal record. Family connections included Marcus Chamberlain, attorney specializing in corporate law. Of course. Seo-jun sat in his study, surrounded by screens displaying surveillance footage, financial records, and background reports. The private investigator he'd hired had been thorough. Derek Chamberlain had been fired from 2 previous positions for interpersonal conflicts with subordinates. Translation: he'd harassed female employees until HR made him a liability. Both times, his uncle had negotiated settlements that included NDAs and scrubbed references. There was an ex-girlfriend from college who'd filed a police report for assault, then dropped it 2 weeks later. Another ex who'd moved out of state suddenly and deleted all her social media. A pattern of control, escalation, and consequences that never stuck because Derek knew how to make problems go away. But it was the follow-up surveillance that made Seo-jun's blood run cold. 6 separate incidents over 2 weeks of Derek approaching Sophia. At bus stops, outside stores, on sidewalks, grabbing her, intimidating her, blocking her path while she had no vehicle to escape in. In 3 instances, he'd physically prevented her from boarding her bus, forcing her to wait for the next one while he delivered whatever threat he'd come to make. Seo-jun clicked play on the video file. The timestamp read, Saturday, 3:47 p.m. location, Piedmont Avenue, 2 blocks from Kroger. Sophia walked down the sidewalk, grocery bags in both hands. Her posture was hunched, defensive. She kept glancing over her shoulder. Then the silver Audi appeared. It slowed to match her pace, crawling alongside her like a predator stalking prey. Derek's face was visible through the driver's side window, watching, waiting. Sophia kept walking, her knuckles white around the plastic bag handles. She couldn't run, couldn't drop the groceries and sprint, had nowhere to go even if she tried. For 3 blocks, Derek followed her. 3 blocks of psychological torture, knowing he was there, knowing he could pull over at any moment, knowing she was completely exposed with no quick escape. When Sophia finally reached the bus stop, Derek drove past. Slowly. making sure she saw him smile. Seo-jun watched the footage twice more. The power imbalance was suffocating. Derek had mobility, money, legal connections. Sophia had nothing but her feet and a bus schedule that made her predictable, vulnerable, easy to find. She was trapped not just by fear, but by economics and logistics. Every bus stop was an ambush point. Every walk to the grocery store was an exposure. Every time she had to wait 15 minutes for the next MARTA train, Derek could find her. Seo-jun pulled up another file. Medical records from 14 months ago. Emory University Hospital, emergency room. Patient, Sophia Booth. Age, 27. Injuries, 2 cracked ribs, contusions on arms and back, minor head trauma. Cause of injury listed as fall downstairs. The attending physician's notes told a different story. Patient's injuries inconsistent with stated cause. Bruising patterns suggest defensive wounds. Patient became agitated when questioned. Declined police notification. Seo-jun cross-referenced the date with the private investigator's timeline. 14 months ago, Sophia had tried to leave. She'd packed a bag and made it as far as the MARTA station platform before Derek found her. What happened next had left her with cracked ribs and a certainty that still lived in her bones. He would kill her if she tried again. So she'd made a different choice. She'd quit her job at the boutique hotel, found work at the Peachtree, and moved into the tiny staff apartment in the basement. She'd deleted her social media, changed her phone number, and told Derek she'd taken a job in Charlotte. For 2 months, it had worked. Then Derek found her anyway. And he'd been finding her ever since. Seo-jun made a phone call. Detective Sarah, Domestic Violence Unit, Atlanta PD. Detective, my name is Seo-jun. I'm calling about a potential stalking and assault case. I have documentation that may be of interest to your unit. There was a pause. What kind of documentation? Surveillance footage, financial records showing a pattern of behavior, medical records, and witness statements from my security team. The victim is a woman named Sophia Booth. The perpetrator is Derek Chamberlain. Another pause, longer this time. And how did you come by this information, Mr. Yi? Miss Booth works in my building. I noticed injuries and became concerned. I have resources at my disposal, and I used them. I see. Sarah's tone was careful, professional. Send me what you have. I'll review it. There's one more thing, Detective. The perpetrator has family connections. His uncle is Marcus Chamberlain, attorney. Previous complaints against Derek have disappeared. I'm familiar with that dynamic, Mr. Yi. Send me the file. Seo-jun leaned back in his chair, studying the screens in front of him. Derek Chamberlain's life, laid out in documents and footage. Professional success built on his uncle's influence. A pattern of abuse spanning years. And now, systematic stalking of a woman who had no car, no money, no way to escape his surveillance. Derek thought he was untouchable because he always had been. He thought Sophia was powerless because she always had been. He thought his wealth and connections made him immune to consequences. He was wrong on all 3 counts. The pattern was clear. Derek Chamberlain thought he was untouchable. Seo-jun was about to teach him the cost of that assumption. Tuesday morning arrived cold and gray, Atlanta's autumn sky threatening rain. At 8 a.m. sharp, Sophia Booth knocked on the door of penthouse 42. Seo-jun had been waiting. He deliberately cleared his morning, working from his study instead of going to the office. When he opened the door, his clinical detachment shattered. The new bruises were impossible to miss. Dark purple handprints around both of her upper arms, as if someone had grabbed her and shaken her. A line of bruising across her collarbone, visible above the white collar of her uniform. And on her neck, just above that collar, the clear impression of fingers. Someone had choked her. Again. Good morning, Mr. Yi, Sophia said softly, her voice carefully neutral. I'll start with the kitchen. Sophia. She froze. Seo-jun stepped aside, gesturing to the living room. Come in. We need to talk. The color drained from her face. I really should start cleaning. I have 3 other residences scheduled today. The cleaning can wait. His voice was quiet but absolute. Sit. Sophia sat on the edge of his expensive couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her entire body tense with the anticipation of confrontation or judgment or dismissal. Seo-jun didn't sit. Instead, he crossed the room slowly, deliberately, and stopped in front of her. Give me your hand. What? Your hand, Sophia. She hesitated, then extended her right hand, trembling. Seo-jun took it gently, carefully, turning her wrist to expose the purple fingerprints that wrapped around her arm like a brand. He studied them with the same focused intensity he applied to everything, his thumb barely grazing the bruised skin. Those dark bruises aren't from cleaning. The words hung in the air between them, like a verdict. Sophia's hand trembled in his grip. For 3 months, she'd walk through his penthouse trying to be invisible. For 3 months, she'd prayed he wouldn't notice, wouldn't ask, wouldn't care. A single tear slid down her cheek. "I know," she whispered, the words breaking free after 14 months of holding them back.
It's going to be okay.
Seo-jun released her wrist carefully, as if she were made of glass, and moved to the chair
It's going
across
to be
from her.
okay.
"I've been watching those bruises get worse for 3 months," he said. "Week after week, different locations, different severity, but always there. Always visible because your uniform doesn't let you hide them." Sophia said nothing, her eyes fixed on her hands. "Every Tuesday and Friday, you come to work with new injuries, which means whoever is doing this has access to you on your days off. Regularly. Systematically." His voice dropped lower. "And today someone choked you." Sophia's breathing had gone shallow. "I know you've tried to handle this yourself," Seo-jun said, his voice gentler now. "I know you probably have reasons for not going to the police, not asking for help. But what you need to understand is that this is going to continue escalating until one of two things happens. Either you end up in the hospital, or you end up dead." Sophia let out a choked sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. And something inside her, something that had been holding her together through sheer force of will for 14 months, finally shattered. "His name is Derek Chamberlain," she whispered. Seo-jun already knew, but he let her speak. "We dated. For 6 months it was. Perfect. Then it wasn't." Her voice was flat, emotionless. She'd told this story to herself so many times it had lost its power to hurt. The first time he grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks, he apologized with tears in his eyes. The second time, he blamed stress at work. By the 10th time, he stopped apologizing at all. Seo-jun held her gaze, giving her space but anchoring her with his presence. "I tried to leave," Sophia continued. 14 months ago. I packed a bag and made it as far as the MARTA station before he found me on the platform." Her hand moved unconsciously to her ribs. "What happened next left me with 2 cracked ribs and the certainty that he would kill me if I tried again." "So you ran a different way." "I quit my job, found work here, moved into the staff apartment, changed my number, deleted everything, told him I'd taken a job in Charlotte." A bitter smile crossed her face. "For 2 months, it worked. Then he found you. He always finds me." Her voice broke. "I went to the police once, filed a report. Derek's uncle is a lawyer. The complaint disappeared. I tried to get a restraining order. The judge said there wasn't enough evidence of immediate danger." She gestured to her bruised arms with a hollow laugh. "Apparently this isn't enough." "When was the last time he hurt you?" Seo-jun asked. Sophia's hand moved to her neck instinctively. "Sunday. Yesterday afternoon. I was walking to the CVS on Peachtree, and he pulled up in his car, blocked the sidewalk." "What did he do?" "He was angry because I haven't been answering his calls. He said I'm making things harder than they need to be." She swallowed hard. "He grabbed my arms, pushed me against the building wall. Then he put his hands around my throat. Not for long, just enough to make his point." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Then he got back in his car and drove away. And I had to stand there at the bus stop for 15 minutes, waiting for the 1 to 10, knowing he could come back any time. Knowing I had nowhere to run even if I tried." Seo-jun felt that cold thing in his chest solidify into purpose. "I need you to listen to me very carefully," Seo-jun said. "What I'm about to tell you is the truth, and you need to believe it." Sophia looked up, her eyes red but focused. "When I'm done, Derek Chamberlain will never put his hands on you again. You can't promise that." "Yes, I can. Because I have resources you don't. Because I understand how power works. And because someone needs to stop him before he kills you." Sophia's breath caught. "I don't want you to kill him." "I'm not planning to." Seo-jun's voice was calm, matter of fact. "But I am planning to make it stop." "How?" "That's not your concern. What is your concern is whether you're ready to trust me." Sophia stared at him. This dangerous man who'd somehow made her situation his business, and felt 14 months of terror crash against a desperate, impossible hope. "What do you need from me?" she whispered. Seo-jun pulled out his phone. "I need you to tell me his routine. Where he works, where he lives, the bus stops where he finds you. Every detail you can remember." "Why?" "Because information is the first step in solving any problem." Sophia took a shaking breath. "He works at Pinnacle Strategic Group in Midtown. Lives at Atlantic Station. He usually finds me at the Kroger bus stop on Wednesdays, the CVS on Peachtree on Saturdays. Sometimes the MARTA station at Lindbergh." Seo-jun made notes, his fingers moving across his phone screen with practiced efficiency. "His uncle is Marcus Chamberlain, corporate attorney. That's how Derek makes things disappear. Not anymore, Seojun said quietly. Sophia looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes that made her believe him. What happens now? She asked. Seojun's expression was unreadable. Now, I make Derek Chamberlain understand that he made a critical mistake. What mistake? Hunting prey that belongs to someone more dangerous than he'll ever be. Seojun ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Conference room. 20 minutes. Bring everything. By Monday morning, his legal team had assembled a war room on the 42nd floor. Detective Sarah arrived last, her expression unreadable, as she surveyed the documents spread across the table. Walk me through it, she said. Seojun's head of security laid out the evidence. Police reports, hospital records, witness statements, surveillance footage of Derek following Sophia. It painted a damning picture until Sarah started shaking her head. His uncle runs one of the best defense firms in the state, she said. This is circumstantial. Good for a restraining order, maybe. But in court? They'll argue mutual toxicity, claim she's vindictive, paint him as the real victim. She met Seojun's gaze. I've seen it 100 times. Rich kids with expensive lawyers don't stay in jail. Then we don't give them room to maneuver. Seojun leaned forward. We catch him in the act. Real-time documentation. Multiple witnesses. No ambiguity. Sarah's eyes narrowed. You want to use her as bait. I want to give him exactly what he wants. One more chance to prove who he really is. Seojun slid a folder toward her. Saturday morning. Sophia follows her normal routine. Coffee shop, grocery store, dry cleaner. Derek won't be able to resist. Your people document everything. My security intervenes only if he makes physical contact. And if he does? Then you have your arrest. Ironclad. No wiggle room for Uncle's legal team. Sarah studied the proposed positions, camera angles, witness placements. This could work, or it could get her killed. Not with 20 trained professionals watching her every move. That afternoon, Seojun presented the plan to Sophia in his office. She listened in silence, her face growing paler with each detail. You want me to? What? Just walk around like normal while he stalks me? Her voice cracked. While you all watch? While we document everything he does. Every violation, every threat, every moment of harassment. Seojun kept his tone even. Detective Sarah will have enough to lock him up properly. By painting a target on my back? The target's already there. It's been there for months. Seojun's eyes held hers. The only question is whether you face it with an army behind you, or keep looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life. Sophia turned to the window, hugging herself. The city stretched below, infinite and indifferent. What if something goes wrong? Then my team pulls you out in under 30 seconds. What if that's not fast enough? Seojun had no answer that wouldn't be a lie. Sophia closed her eyes. When? Saturday morning, 9 a.m. That's 5 days away. 5 days to prepare, to make sure nothing goes wrong. She turned back to him, and the fear in her eyes made something twist in his chest. Why are you doing this? Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. Sophia searched his face for a long moment, then nodded once. Okay, Saturday. The week crawled by in careful preparation. Tuesday. Security teams memorized routes, timing, potential choke points. Detective Sarah positioned plainclothes officers at each location on Sophia's route. Wednesday. Communication protocols tested, body cameras checked, backup plans for the backup plans. Thursday. Final briefing. Sarah's voice was steel. We document everything. No heroics. No premature intervention. We need him to show his pattern clearly, undeniably. Seojun's security chief nodded. And if he escalates? Then we move, fast. Friday night settled over the city like held breath. In the basement apartment, Sophia sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the outfit she'd laid out for tomorrow. Jeans, sneakers, her favorite jacket. The same clothes she'd worn every Saturday for the past year. Normal, routine, predictable. Her phone sat beside her, silent. The burner Seojun had given her felt heavy in her pocket. She thought about running, buying a bus ticket, disappearing into some other city, some other life, starting over again. But she was so tired of running. 42 floors above the city, Seojun stood at his penthouse window. His security chief was on standby. Detective Sarah's number was one touch away. Everything that could be prepared had been prepared. Everything except the variables. Human nature, desperation, the moment when plans collided with reality. He poured himself a scotch he wouldn't drink and watched the city lights blur into constellations. At 8:15 Saturday morning, his phone lit up with confirmations from each team. All in position. All ready. He typed out the message and sent it. Team is in position. Detective Sarah is ready. You're not alone. KMJ. In the basement apartment, Sophia's phone buzzed. She read the message 3 times, then stood and walked to her closet. Her hands shook as she tied her shoes. Outside, the morning was clear and cold. Perfect visibility. Perfect conditions for a trap. She opened her door and stepped into the hallway. The game had begun. And Sophia is stepping into the line of fire, no longer running but facing her predator with an army at her back. We are so grateful to have our own global army of listeners joining us for this emotional ride. Drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from today. Now let's continue the story. Sophia's Saturday morning routine had been the same for 13 months. TD Bank on Peachtree Street to deposit her paycheck. Then the bus stop on the corner of 10th, waiting for the number 37 that would take her to the laundromat. 12 minutes of exposure. That's all it would take. She walked the 3 blocks to the bank with her chin up, forcing herself not to scan parked cars or check over her shoulder. The morning air was crisp, the sidewalks already filling with weekend crowds. Normal. Everything had to look normal. Inside the bank, she filled out her deposit slip with hands that barely trembled. Through the window, she could see the street. No silver Audi. Not yet. The transaction took 4 minutes. When she emerged back into the sunlight, she saw it. Derek's car, idling half a block down. He wasn't even trying to hide. Sophia's pulse hammered in her throat, but she kept walking. Past the coffee shop, past the bookstore, toward the bus stop where an elderly woman was already waiting, shopping bags at her feet. Behind her, she heard a car door slam. Don't run. Don't look back. Let him come to you. She reached the bus stop and stood beneath the shelter, checking the schedule she'd memorized weeks ago. The number 37 would arrive in 8 minutes. Footsteps behind her. Fast. Purposeful. Sophia. Derek's voice sliced through the morning noise. She turned slowly, forcing herself to meet his eyes. He looked terrible. Unshaven, his shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and obsession. But his smile was the same. Charming. Dangerous. Certain of victory. I've been looking everywhere for you, he said, stepping closer. Baby, we need to talk. Stay away from me. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I have a restraining order. That's just a misunderstanding. Those cops didn't listen to my side. Derek, leave me alone. He moved faster than she expected, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. His hand clamped around her upper arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Don't walk away from me, he hissed. You don't get to just disappear. Let go of me. Sophia tried to pull back, but his other hand shot out, wrapping around her throat. The elderly woman gasped. A teenager across the street pulled out his phone. You're mine, Sophia. You'll always be mine. Derek's face was inches from hers, his breath hot and rapid. You think some restraining order changes that? Sophia clawed at his hand, her vision starting to blur at the edges. Atlanta PD. Let her go. Now. Detective Sarah's voice cracked across the street like a whip. She was already moving, shield raised, 2 uniformed officers flanking her. Derek's head snapped toward them, his grip loosening just enough for Sophia to wrench backward. She stumbled against the bus shelter, gasping. Get on the ground. Hands behind your head. For a split second, Derek looked like he might run. Then his expression shifted back to that charming smile, the one that had talked him out of trouble 100 times before. Officers, this is just a misunderstanding. My girlfriend and I were having a discussion. She's not your girlfriend, Sarah said coldly. And that wasn't a discussion. On the ground. Now. Do you know who my uncle is? Marcus Chamberlain. He's one of the most respected. I don't care if your uncle is the governor. You just assaulted someone in front of multiple witnesses. Sarah gestured sharply. Last chance. Ground. Now. Derek's smile cracked. You're making a huge mistake. When my uncle hears about this, your uncle can file whatever complaints he wants. Sarah's voice was steel. But right now, you're under arrest for aggravated assault, violation of a restraining order, and stalking. The uniformed officers moved in. Derek tried to pull away, still talking, still threatening, still certain he could charm or bully his way out. But the handcuffs closed around his wrists with a sound like finality. Sophia watched from the bus shelter, her hand pressed to her throat. The elderly woman had moved beside her, one protective hand on her shoulder. I saw everything, dear, the woman said quietly. He grabbed you. You told him to leave you alone and he wouldn't listen. Across the street, the teenager called out, I got it all on video. Detective Sarah looked at Sophia. Are you hurt? Sophia's legs felt weak, but she stepped forward, looked Derek directly in the eyes as the officers held him. "I'm done being afraid of you," she said. Derek's face contorted with rage. "You think this is over? You think—" "Get him out of here," Sarah ordered. As they loaded Derek into the patrol car, his threats still echoing down the street, Sophia felt something inside her chest unclench for the first time in months. It wasn't over. She knew that. But for the first time, she'd faced him and survived. For the first time, someone had believed her. At the police station, Detective Sarah documented everything. Photographed the finger marks already darkening on Sophia's arms, the red marks on her throat. Took statements from the elderly woman and the teenager. The video was damning, clear, undeniable. "He'll make bail," Sarah warned. "His uncle's already called 3 times. "How long?" 2 hours, maybe less. Sophia nodded slowly. She'd known this wouldn't end with one arrest. But it was a start. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Well done. Phase 2 begins now. KMJ." Derek Hartwell sat in a holding cell, his uncle's voice already echoing down the hallway, demanding his release. The trap had worked. But the war had just begun. Apartment 4H was nothing like the basement. Sophia stood in the doorway, taking in the space that would be her new home. 41st floor. Windows that actually let in light. A kitchen with appliances that worked. A bedroom with a door that locked from the inside. Security system is state-of-the-art, Seo-jun's head of security explained, demonstrating the panel by the door. Motion sensors on all entry points. Cameras in the hallway. Panic button here. He indicated a small device on the counter. "Press it, and you'll have security at your door in under 60 seconds. Sophia touched the panic button with one finger, feeling its weight. Real. Solid. "Your new phone." He handed her a sleek device. "Detective Sarah's number is programmed in. So is Mr. Kim's. And our security office. 24/7 monitoring." When he left, Sophia walked to the window. The city sprawled below, afternoon light turning glass towers into columns of gold. Somewhere down there, Derek was free, out on bail, furious. Her phone rang, the new one. Seo-jun's name on the screen. "Miss Booth, are you settled in?" "Yes, thank you. For all of this." The words felt inadequate. "Derek made bail 2 hours ago." Seo-jun's voice was matter of fact. His uncle posted it personally. Sophia's hand tightened on the phone. "I know. Detective Sarah warned me." "Good. Then you should also know that as of this morning, Derek's employer has launched a formal investigation into financial irregularities in his department." Sophia blinked. "What?" "Embezzlement. Harassment complaints from 2 female co-workers that were never properly filed. Expense reports that don't quite add up." A pause. "Sometimes when you start pulling threads, entire tapestries unravel. You did this. Not a question. I made some calls. Suggested some people look more carefully at records they already had." His tone remained neutral. "The evidence did the rest." Sophia sank onto the couch, her mind reeling. What does that mean for him? It means by Monday, Derek Hartwell won't have a job. By next week, his professional reputation will be in shambles. His connections will start avoiding his calls. Seo-jun's voice dropped lower. It means he's learning what it feels like when your world gets smaller and smaller, until there's nowhere left to hide. The satisfaction in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, Sophia felt something else. A dark, guilty relief. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked quietly. "Because men like Derek don't stop until they're forced to stop. Because the legal system moves slowly, and he's already proven he'll violate restraining orders. A beat of silence. And because you deserve to feel safe." Across town, Derek Hartwell sat in his uncle's office, listening to Marcus Chamberlain outline exactly how much trouble he was in. "The assault charge is manageable. We'll argue mutual altercation, claim she provoked you." Marcus's fingers drummed on his desk. "But these allegations at work? Derek, what the hell have you been doing?" "Nothing. I swear, I don't know where this is coming from. 2 women have come forward with harassment complaints. Your expense reports are being audited. They're talking about embezzlement." Marcus's eyes were cold. "Are you telling me there's nothing to find?" Derek's mouth went dry. The company credit card he'd used for personal expenses. The junior analyst he'd cornered in the break room. Small things. Nothing that mattered. "It's her," he said. "Sophia. She's behind this somehow. She's trying to destroy me. A woman you terrorized is not capable of orchestrating a corporate investigation." Marcus stood, his patience clearly exhausted. "You did this to yourself. And I'm done cleaning up your messes. You can't just abandon me." "I can and I will if you don't get your life together." Marcus's voice was final. "Stay away from Sophia Booth. Stay out of trouble. Let me handle the legal issues. Can you do that? Derek nodded mechanically, but his mind was already elsewhere. Sophia had found someone with money and power, someone who thought he could protect her. They had no idea what Derek was capable of when cornered. That evening, Seo-jun called Sophia again. How are you feeling? Overwhelmed, grateful, confused. Sophia wrapped her arms around herself. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. What do you mean? All of this, the apartment, the security, destroying Derek's career. What does it cost? What do you want from me? The line was quiet for a long moment. When Seo-jun spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Derek Chamberlain spent 14 months convincing you that you were powerless, that no one would help you, that you deserved what he did to you. A pause. He was wrong. But why do you care? Because I can. Because someone should. He cleared his throat. You're not powerless anymore, Miss Booth. You're not alone. And there is no price. Just get some rest. Let yourself feel safe. After he hung up, Sophia stood at her window, looking out at the city lights. One floor above her, Seo-jun's penthouse windows glowed. Close enough to call for help. Close enough to feel protected. Far enough to keep breathing. Sometimes the most dangerous moment isn't when a predator is hunting. It's when he realizes his prey has found a protector more dangerous than he ever imagined. Derek Hartwell was about to learn that lesson the hard way. But first, he had to unravel completely. And unraveling men do desperate things. Monday's restraining order hearing lasted 43 minutes. Sophia sat in the courtroom with Detective Sarah beside her, watching Derek's expensive lawyer argue that the assault had been mutual, that emotions had run high, that his client deserved compassion and understanding. Then the prosecutor played the teenager's video. Derek's hands around Sophia's throat, her desperate attempts to pull away, his voice, clear and unmistakable. You're mine, Sophia. You'll always be mine. The judge's face hardened. Restraining order granted. 500 feet minimum distance. No contact, direct or indirect. Violation will result in immediate arrest and detention without bail. Derek's lawyer tried to salvage something. Your Honor, my client's employer has already... I'm aware Mr. Hartwell lost his position this morning, the judge interrupted. Perhaps he should have considered consequences before committing assault in broad daylight. As they filed out, Sophia caught Derek's expression. Not shame, not remorse. Pure, crystalline rage. Tuesday started quietly. Sophia worked her shift at the peach tree, fielding curious glances from coworkers who'd heard about the incident. She kept her head down, focused on tasks, tried not to think about Derek somewhere out there, his world crumbling. By evening, she'd almost convinced herself the worst was over. Then, at 9:47 p.m., her phone buzzed. Security alert. Her blood turned to ice. The screen showed a grainy image from the parking garage camera. A silver Audi, a figure moving toward the elevator banks with purpose. Derek. Sophia's hands started shaking. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering to the kitchen floor as her breath caught in her throat. He'd found her. He'd come for her. Even with the restraining order, even with security, even with everything. Her vision narrowed. The apartment walls seemed to press inward. She stumbled toward the counter, her hand scrabbling for the panic button. Found it. Pressed it once, twice, 3 times. Somewhere distant, she heard sirens starting to wail. But all she could see was Derek's face, his hands around her throat. You're mine. You'll always be mine. Her knees buckled. She slid down the kitchen cabinet until she was on the floor, back pressed against the wood, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Her chest was too tight. Her lungs wouldn't expand. She was drowning on dry land. Footsteps in the hallway. Running. Miss Booth. A key in the lock. When had she given him a key? And then Seo-jun was there, still in his suit, his usually composed face tight with something fierce and protective. He took one look at her pressed against the cabinet, hyperventilating, and slowly lowered himself to sit on the floor beside her. Not touching, not crowding, just present. Breathe with me, he said quietly. In for 4 counts. He demonstrated, his chest rising slowly. Sophia tried to follow, but her breath kept hitching, stuttering. He didn't get to you. Seo-jun continued, his voice steady and grounding. My security team intercepted him in the parking garage. He never made it past the 1st floor. He never got close. Sophia tried to speak, but only a choked sound emerged. Look at me. Seo-jun waited until her terrified eyes met his. Derek Hartwell is in the back of a police car right now. Detective Sarah is downstairs. He's in handcuffs. He can't hurt you. He found me. The words came out broken, and my team stopped him. Seo-jun's jaw tightened. He had a knife, duct tape, zip ties in his car. The police have everything documented. This isn't just a restraining order violation, this is attempted assault with premeditation. Sophia's breathing was still too fast, too shallow. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. In for 4, Seojun repeated, demonstrating again. Hold for 4, out for 4, with me. This time, Sophia managed to follow. In, hold, out, in, hold, out. Gradually, the apartment came back into focus. The racing of her heart slowed from a gallop to something almost normal. They sat in silence for a long moment, both on the kitchen floor, the fluorescent light humming overhead. I need to tell you something, Seojun said finally. His voice was different now, raw, stripped of its usual control. When my team called to say Derek was in the building, I was in my penthouse, 1 floor up. Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice. I made it to the parking garage in under a minute. He paused. My security chief had to physically stop me from reaching Derek. What do you mean? I mean I would have killed him. Seojun's hands clenched briefly at his sides. If he'd gotten to you, if my team hadn't intercepted him first, I would have killed him. My security chief knew that. That's why he stopped me. Sophia turned to look at him fully. His jaw was rigid, his eyes fixed on the opposite wall, his breathing carefully controlled. That's not normal, she whispered. No, it's not. He met her gaze, and the intensity there made her chest tighten. But neither is what he did to you, and I couldn't let it happen again. I couldn't. Why? The question barely made it past her lips. Why do you care this much? Seojun was quiet for so long Sophia thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant. My sister had someone like Derek once. I was 17, too young to understand what was happening, too powerless to help. He swallowed hard. By the time I figured it out, she'd already disappeared, changed her name, cut all contact to protect herself because no one else would. Did she? I don't know. She won't talk to me, won't see me. His voice cracked slightly. So when I see someone else going through that, someone I actually have the power to help. He trailed off, shaking his head. Sophia felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just, let me help you. Let me make sure he never gets close again. They sat there for another 10 minutes, neither moving, both processing the weight of what had almost happened. Finally, Seojun shifted. You're safe. He can't get to you. I made sure of it. How can you be sure? Because Derek Hartwell violated a restraining order with premeditated intent to harm. Because he had weapons. Because there are a dozen cameras and witnesses. Seojun's voice hardened. Because I will make sure he stays locked up. Sophia let those words sink in. Safe. Actually, truly safe. Thank you, she whispered. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Seojun looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Something softer, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen from him. Then you're welcome. He stood first, then offered his hand. Sophia let him pull her to her feet, still shaky but standing. Come on, he said gently. Let's get you some water. Then you should rest. Downstairs, Derek Hartwell sat in the back of a police car, screaming threats about lawyers and consequences and revenge that no one was listening to anymore. But upstairs, in apartment 4H, Sophia Booth finally let herself believe it was over. The crisis had ended. Now came the harder question. What happened next? 2 weeks later, autumn settled over Atlanta with crisp mornings and golden light that slanted through Sophia's windows at angles that still surprised her. Real windows, real light, real safety. Derek was awaiting trial in the Fulton County Jail, bail denied pending multiple felony charges, aggravated assault, stalking, violation of a restraining order, attempted assault with a deadly weapon. His uncle had stopped returning his calls after the 3rd arrest. His former colleagues had stopped mentioning his name at all. Sophia returned to work at the Peachtree, but her assignments had changed. Instead of rotating floors and random apartments, she now reported directly to the penthouse to Seojun's personal household staff coordinator, which meant, in practice, to Seojun himself. The arrangement should have felt awkward, should have felt like charity or pity or something that made her skin crawl. Instead, it felt like breathing room. You don't have to do this, she'd said that first morning, standing in his pristine kitchen with her cleaning supplies. Do what? He'd looked up from his laptop, genuinely confused. Create a job for me. I can work other floors. I'm not creating anything. My penthouse needs maintenance. You're qualified. The position is yours if you want it. He'd returned to his screen. Unless you'd prefer other assignments? No, I thank you. Then we're settled. The work was easy. Seojun was meticulous but not demanding, absent but somehow always aware. He traveled less than she'd expected, working from home 3 or 4 days a week, his presence a quiet constant. They developed a rhythm. She'd arrive at 8, start in the kitchen. He'd be in his office on calls sometimes in Korean, his voice taking on different cadences, sharper edges. By 10, he'd emerge for coffee, and they'd exchange brief words. Weather, news, nothing consequential. Until the day she found him standing at his window, staring out at the city with an expression she recognized too well. Bad news? She asked quietly. He turned, startled, then shook his head. Old news. My sister's birthday was yesterday. Sophia set down her cleaning supplies. The one you told me about? The only one I have. A bitter smile. I sent flowers to an address I'm not sure is still current. They weren't returned, so maybe she got them. Maybe she threw them away. I'll never know. That must be hard. It is what it is. He turned back to the window. I failed her when it mattered. Now I live with that. Sophia moved to stand beside him, not too close. Both of them reflected in the glass. You were 17. You didn't fail her. The system did. I should have seen it sooner. Done something. I was 26 when I met Derek, Sophia heard herself say. College educated, independent. I thought I was smart enough to recognize danger. Her reflection wavered. It took 3 months before he first pushed me. 6 before he hit me. A year before I understood I was trapped. Seojun looked at her then, really looked. How did you meet him? Coffee shop. He spilled my latte, bought me a new one, made me laugh. The memory tasted like ashes. He was charming, attentive. Everything escalated so slowly I didn't notice, until suddenly I was afraid to check my phone, afraid to see friends, afraid to exist outside his approval. When did you decide to leave? Sophia touched her ribs unconsciously. When he broke 3 of them. I was in the ER, and the nurse gave me this look like she knew, like she'd seen it before. She slipped me a card for a domestic violence shelter. Her voice dropped. I went home, packed 1 bag, and ran. I've been running ever since. Until now, she agreed quietly. They stood in silence, the city humming below them, both carrying scars the other couldn't see. What do you get out of helping me? Sophia asked finally. Really? Seojun considered the question. The knowledge that I didn't look away. That when someone needed help, I had the power to give it. And I did. He met her eyes. Does that make sense? More than you know. The days accumulated. October became November. Sophia's bruises faded from purple to yellow to nothing, new ones never appearing physical evidence of freedom she hadn't dared hope for. The conversations grew longer, easier. She learned he'd grown up in Seoul's Gangnam district, sent to boarding school in Switzerland at 15, built his fortune through a combination of inherited connections and ruthless intelligence. He learned she'd wanted to be a teacher before Derek, that she loved terrible reality TV, that she'd once hiked the Appalachian Trail for 3 weeks alone. Alone? He'd raised an eyebrow. That's dangerous. So is staying with someone who hurts you. She'd shrugged. Sometimes the wilderness is safer than home. One afternoon, she called him Seojun instead of Mr. Kim. He'd paused, smiled slightly, and returned to his work without comment. The formality between them shifted, became something more textured. She noticed things. The way he took his coffee. The way he ran his hand through his hair when frustrated. The way his entire body language changed when he switched to Korean on calls. More animated. More himself. He noticed things too. The way she hummed while cleaning. The way she always double-checked locks. The way her shoulders gradually stopped hunching when he entered a room. One morning, her phone buzzed while she was dusting his bookshelves. She glanced at it and laughed a real, surprised, genuine laugh that rang through the penthouse. Seojun looked up from his laptop, his expression arrested. What? Sophia asked, suddenly self-conscious. That's the first time I've heard you laugh. His voice was soft. I like it. Sophia felt heat rise to her cheeks. It's just a meme. Nothing important. It's important, he said, and something in his tone made her heart skip. That night, alone in apartment 4H, Sophia stood at her window and looked up at the penthouse 1 floor above. Light glowed warm against the darkness. The crisis that brought them together was resolving. Derek was in jail. She was safe. The emergency was over. So why did the thought of going back to normal of this arrangement ending feel like losing something precious before she'd fully understood what it was? 1 floor above, Seojun stood at his own window, looking down at the city and thinking the same impossible thought. What happened when the rescue was complete? What happened when gratitude became something neither of them had planned for? 3 months later, the answer started to reveal itself. Derek Hartwell's sentencing made the local news. 5 years in state prison, with 3 additional victims coming forward once they learned he'd finally been stopped. The courtroom had been packed. Sophia attended with Detective Sarah beside her, watching as the judge handed down a sentence that felt both too much and not enough. 5 years, Sophia said afterward, standing on the courthouse steps. It feels like not enough time for what he did, Sarah finished. But enough time for you to build a completely different life. That's what matters now. And she was building one. The bruises had faded months ago, leaving behind skin that was hers again. She'd started shopping for herself, clothes she actually liked, colors Derek had never let her wear, bright blues, deep reds, patterns that made her feel bold. She'd taken Korean language lessons online, 30 minutes every morning before work, fumbling through vocabulary, massacring pronunciation, but persistent. One morning in late January, she arrived at the penthouse and greeted Seo-jun with a careful, accented, "Chwan aching yeyo." Good morning. He'd been reaching for his coffee and froze mid-motion, staring at her. Say that again. "Chwan achim yeyo," she repeated, feeling her cheeks warm. I probably butchered it. No. His expression softened into something she'd never seen before. Surprise, pleasure, something tender. No, that was. Why are you learning Korean? I hear you on calls. I wanted to understand. She shrugged, suddenly shy. And maybe I wanted to understand you. Seo-jun set down his coffee carefully, as if afraid sudden movement might shatter the moment. Sophia. Is it weird? It's weird, isn't it? I can stop. Don't stop. His voice was quiet but firm. Please don't stop. A week later, he called her into his office for what he termed a business discussion. I want to formalize your position, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. Head of Household Management, significant salary increase, full benefits, retirement contribution. You'd oversee all aspects of the penthouse and coordinate with building management for my other properties. Sophia opened the folder, her eyes widening at the numbers. Seo-jun, this is market rate for the position. You're qualified. You've proven yourself reliable, discreet, efficient. He kept his tone professional, but his hands were restless. You should have time to review before. What if I said I wanted to stay for reasons that have nothing to do with the job? The words hung in the air between them. Seo-jun went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want this to be just about employment anymore. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. I'm saying the last 3 months, getting to know you, talking with you, learning about your life, that's been the best part of my day. Every day. Sophia. Her name was barely a whisper. You've been through trauma. What you're feeling might be... Don't. She cut him off gently. Don't explain my feelings to me. I've had 3 months to think about this. 3 months of therapy, of healing, of becoming myself again. She met his eyes. And I know the difference between gratitude and what I feel when you look at me like you're doing right now. Seo-jun stood slowly, moving around the desk. If we do this, it changes everything. I know. My world is complicated, sometimes dangerous. I have enemies, business rivals, people who would use someone I care about to get to me. I've lived afraid for 14 months, Sophia said steadily. I'm not afraid anymore, not with you. He reached out, his hand cupping her face with a gentleness that made her breath catch. You're sure? I'm sure. Their first real date was at a Korean restaurant in Midtown, small and intimate, with food that Seo-jun ordered entirely in Korean while Sophia listened to the music of his native language. Teach me, she said over bibimbap and banchan, about your culture, your family, everything you haven't told me yet. So he did. Spoke about Seoul, about family expectations, about the pressure of being the oldest son in a family where success was measured in empire building, about his sister, the brilliant artist who never fit their parents' vision, about the guilt that still kept him awake some nights. I can't promise you safety from everything, he said quietly. My life is what it is. I don't need promises of a perfect life. Sophia reached across the table, her hand finding his. I just need honesty, partnership, respect. Those I can promise. The first kiss happened in her apartment 4H, the place that had been her sanctuary, now feeling like a threshold to something new. Seo-jun had walked her to her door, and they'd stood in the hallway, neither wanting the evening to end. I should go, he said, not moving. You should, she agreed, not stepping back. Sophia. His hand rose to her face again, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Tell me if this is too fast. It's not fast. It's been months. She tilted her face up toward his. It's been every conversation, every laugh, every moment you